All right, everyone, we have to talk about CNN again, once again doing something dumb. They are the premier of the legacy media, the absolute vanguard of literal fake news, and have been since the time that they told people that it was illegal to go to WikiLeaks and look at anything there. So they're out ahead of everyone else right now, although their other competing groups are there to try to compete with them for that top slot as, the fakest of fake. But here's a new thing, and it goes hand in hand with a phenomenon that we've seen for some time, honestly. It's not just the left that does this, but primarily over the last few years, let's face it, it's primarily liberals self-proclaimed doing this. CNN had a piece, link in the description, archived, of course. And they're like, oh, Trump used the word sicko to describe the school shooter, the Parkland shooter. And this is problematic. He shouldn't, it's like stigmatizing people with mental illness or something. Two things. First and foremost, this is a perfect example of the differentiation. Even CNN here saying, well, you're going to stigmatize people. So you admit that there's a difference between the vast core of people with a so-called mental illness who are not violent, that you, by the way, want to disarm. You're right on board with Trump's proposal when it comes to that aspect of universal expanded background checks. Oh, it's fine. Yeah, we can take guns away from the mentally ill. You're saying there's a big difference between the shooter who is psychotic, an actual loon, and somebody who's got maybe mild depression or postpartum, they just give birth, or someone has, once in a while they have a mild seizure disorder, they have a tic, they've got Asperger's syndrome or something. You're admitting that there's a difference. Well, you don't admit that there's a difference for the purposes of guns. It's sort of like the no-fly list. They've done the same thing throughout time, and it shouldn't even exist. You should have to provide a warrant. If you want to punish someone by saying, well, you can't, be on an airplane because my pragmatism, you might be a dangerous person, well, then put them in jail if they're so dangerous. They must be plotting something. If they're so out there, if they're such a psycho, they've got to have something going on in their heads. Check through their browsing history and see what recipes they've been looking up. Are they chemical or are they food related? Probably the former if they're dangerous. And compel a judge to issue a warrant and then prosecute them for, some sort of crime. Don't just sit there and punish them without them having actually done anything wrong. That's how you create fanatics. You take someone who you think is a little out there, you make him a lot more out there by constantly, by punishing him in a way, stigmatizing. The term almost makes sense in that context. The second hypocrisy is that CNN, like maybe MSNBC or all of these others, and a lot of people too, in your private interactions, you'll notice they have this same problem. They have a huge problem with Trump calling someone who has committed a crime and killed a bunch of people a sicko. That's problematic for him to say that. But it's perfectly okay for Hillary Clinton to say, well, whatever proportion, some tens of millions of Americans are deplorable, irredeemable individuals. That's okay. You can insult tens of millions of law-abiding individuals who have done nothing wrong other than, I guess, not want to vote for you because you're boring, or you're crazy and you want to bomb Iran, or, I don't know, you basically, the John McCain, who's a couple years older, I believe, and you have a D after your name instead of an R. I would say the gender's a difference, but at her age, it probably doesn't make a difference. And John McCain's age, too, to tell the truth. No. You come out, that's okay. You can insult tens of millions of people, it's fine. But you can't call someone who is actually like butcherous and psychopathic a sicko. That's a wrong term to use. It's wrong speak. There's something wrong with you. I disagree. I think that probably it's perfectly appropriate. I don't have a problem with them using that term. If someone has done something sick, like, kill a bunch of school children, yeah, sicko, it works as a term. I would say it's pretty fitting. Then again, that's just me. I'm not a high IQ enough like those people at CNN because they have journalism degrees, so somehow this makes what they say more true. Makes them more truthy. Now, we're in the post-truth era when it comes to CNN. They've been in the post-truth era for quite some time. People just didn't notice it until recently quite as much because it wasn't so transparent. They jumped the gun. They decided to pull back the curtains so people could see the concrete wall, and they tried to get off by saying, oh yeah, well, of course there's a concrete wall and there's no show going on back there, but just look at that guy over there, and it sort of didn't really pan out for them. And now they're trying to run damage control by attacking people like us on YouTube, on some blog, some private website, people they used to say were inconsequential. Nobody listens to you, haha, your gimmick. Yeah, keeping, you know, what's this PayPal thing? That seems kind of weird and nerdy. Cryptocurrency, oh, you know, who cares about that stuff? Nobody will ever make money off of it. They made all these mistakes, and it's really funny, but CNN isn't the only group that has that problem. Where they identify something as problematic, it's like people talking online and saying something offensive is a problem to these people. They would have you believe it's like the end of the world. It's a huge, huge panic for them. It's a moral panic. They've convinced a lot of people that they're armies of fanatics that are trying to indoctrinate their kids online. And that it's not just, you know, a combination of people who are just there for the lulz, literally trolling. People who they label fanatics who aren't actual fanatics. They just happen to be outside of the very, very centrist establishment. And then sprinkled throughout there, yeah, a handful of people that are actually out there. That's the smallest of those three groups, though. They've convinced people that the third is not only the largest, but the large and growing phenomena that's going to, I don't know, cripple their kids forever by turning them into a skinhead or something. They've convinced people that that's a problem, but for years and years they ignore thousands or tens of thousands of people dying in drone strikes. They ignore epidemics. They ignore, you know, civil conflict in other countries. And they ignore the fact that they've managed to alienate, now the establishment as a whole has managed to alienate most of the United States. Most of the working and middle class is now socially alienated. They're just barely beginning to become less alienated because they have a president who at least on money appears to care. And even he's basically just a mild reformer. Look, and he's no reformist on guns. And who cares about reform anyway? By the way, the end result of any continuous and persistent reform movement is its most fanatic end goal. That is, for instance, if you have a group that's dedicated towards gun reform, aka disarmament, that's what they ultimately want, they'll argue for an assault rifle ban. If they don't get it, they have some issue to harangue about. They can raise money, they can pay people their salaries, they can continue to exist. It's the whole purpose. The group exists. It wants to continue to exist. The tendency towards organization is to grow. That's the problem of bureaucracy. Not to suddenly disappear because the reform that they achieved, you know, is passed or something. It's like UKIP. UKIP's like, oh, we want a Brexit. They get their Brexit. Where are they? You know, UKIP's still there. Huh, I wonder. That seems rather strange. Now, no offense to them because they've taken up other political issues. But that's the progression. They have to find something else to talk about. You give someone an assault rifle ban, pretty soon, I guarantee you within 10 years, that group, now successful on its original reform proposal, so-called, will argue for something else. It is a slippery slope. It does actually exist. The fallacy is less common than the reality of a slippery slope. It only looks like a fallacy because oftentimes these groups stall out and they're no longer able to achieve their actual goals because society moves in the other direction. For instance, society, since McDonald versus Chicago days, has gone heavily against any additional gun control in most measures. Most people do not want to ban other people's right to defend themselves. If anything, the Second Amendment's likely to be enhanced over time by the courts more than anything, which is probably it's a good thing for this country. CNN, meanwhile, it has a problem. With the most topical language, it's not stigmatizing anyone. It's saying, hey, this person who killed, what was it, 17 people, I think, died. Oh, he killed a bunch of people. He's a sicko. So, are you really so politically correct, so really bland and cloying that you think that that word of all words is a problem? I can think of a million words that are, you know, more offensive, so-called. I think people should be able to use those too. I think people should be able to say whatever they want unless it's a credible threat of violence or something that itself would be criminal in so saying. Like, hey, I am going to attack you at dawn. Is it a credible threat? You're threatening to, I don't know, egg your neighbor's house. Okay, you've threatened to vandalize his house. That's a crime. It's a criminal threat. But if you say, hey, I'm going to put a laser on the moon and burn your car's tires into the asphalt below them so that when you try to go to work in the morning, you'll find it impossible, and then I'm going to sit there laughing at you, that's not a credible threat. There's a difference. Meanwhile, CNN's so bland, they don't even want Trump to be able to say sicko. Oh, you're stigmatizing the mentally ill. Yeah, just ignore dead children, that's okay. Now, 10,000 mothers died the other day. That doesn't, they don't bat an eye. This dude killed 3 people, and then, you know, the shooter himself kills like, again, 17 people or whatever. That's not a problem. Apparently, you know, who gives a fuck about it unless we can exploit it for gun control. But we do care about the moniker that Trump said a mean thing to him. That's unkind. It's anti-PC. Well, who cares if it's anti? Who cares if you're offended? What we need to do as a society is start saying that, who cares if you're offended? Who gives a crap? It doesn't matter. It doesn't affect the other person. It affects you. You're offended. Okay, get over yourself. You're not the all-important snowflake of all existence. That's about all. Peace out.